Steve Sarkisian takes over for Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
What changes?
I think Bama gets more conservative, which I honestly think improves the team. And I don't want to disparage Lane because I think Lane was creative. He did some great things in development of quarterbacks. In particular, when you look at the last few years, he won a championship with Coker and that great game plan with O.J. Howard a year ago in the national championship. But this is also true about Lane. He's a vanity play caller.
Yeah.
That's in his DNA. He wants to have the perfect play call. He wants to throw it 40 times. He wants to throw his arms up on the sideline and get those shots. That's not a knock as much as it is. It's just in his DNA. And I think Steve Sarkisian, while they're cut from the same cloth, Sarkisian is inherently a little bit more conservative. In particular, in this situation, it's your first time calling plays for Nick Saban in a national championship with a true freshman quarterback. Bo Scarborough's most attempts he's gotten this year, 19. He's going to blow that out of the water tonight.
Yes.
I mean, he's going to get the ball 25, 30 times, and I think that actually helps Alabama tonight.
It was a wild, high-scoring affair last year.
Yeah.
Is it tonight?
I don't think it's as much of a high-scoring affair. I don't think Clemson's offensive line is good enough to keep at bay that front seven from Alabama. And I just don't think that Alabama's offense is quite what it was last year or what it was capable of last year because Hurts has some restrictions throwing the ball down the field.
He is a freshman.
He is a freshman, but he is dynamic with his feet, which helps out in other areas. They're going to be a little bit more downhill. I think it's going to be a shorter game because of that ball control I was talking about with Scarborough, getting 25 carries somewhere in there. They're going to run right at Clemson's defense, which is exactly the opposite of what Ohio State did, who tried to run away from Clemson's defense.
Can't run away from them.
Can't really, you have to run at speed and away from power. And Clemson is more of a speed defense. You got to run right at them. That's when Ohio State had some measure of success, and I think that's what Pitt had a lot of success doing that with James Conner. So that's the type of game I see playing out. Maybe 24-20 I see going Bama's way.
Who are the possible X factors? Now, we know Deshaun Watson's great, but is there, if not even a player, a scheme, a moment, a unit?
I think that the biggest X factor is the fact that if you look at what Bama does defensively, they're a great defense, but they're great because of what they force you to do, which is put the entire game on the quarterback's shoulders. Every game, that's what they do. Now, in games where the quarterback gets hot, like Chad Kelly, and he's got wide receiver threats down the field, they can score some points. But they're never going to let you control the game at the line of scrimmage. It's just not going to happen. So the X factor for me is this, I guess it would be trend or statistic. Bama has not allowed a team to rush for more than 3 yards per carry in a game this year. Haven't allowed one. There's only been one time then Clemson has averaged 3 yards or less in a game rushing the football against Pitt. Deshaun Watson threw 3 interceptions in that game. I think Watson's going to be a little uncomfortable with the entirety of the game resting on his shoulders. I don't think Bama's going to allow Gallman to run wild, and for that reason is why I'm picking Alabama to win the game.
8-year run of being dominant, 7 to 8 years.
Yeah.
But there's only about 6 Bama guys. And this is not Julio Jones, C.J. Mosley, Darius Miles, Amari Cooper. There's about 6 guys that have come from Alabama who have really risen to elite NFL players.
Okay.
Not necessarily the best player, Clinton Dix, really, really high-end player. I mean, is it, when the Miami Hurricanes dominated, their guys went and become Hall of Famers.
Sure.
Is that tell us this thing's mostly just about Saban?
Man, that's a great question. I've never really thought of it that way because it is, I think it's always such an anomaly when it is the Miami version. When guys go and just they're stars in the National Football League and you're just a factory for Hall of Fame caliber or all-pro caliber players.
He's winning with undraftable quarterbacks. He's dominating a sport, and they're average at the most important position.
Here's what's interesting to me is that you're hearing a lot of people, and you heard Bill Simmons talk about this, and how Saban should go to the NFL, and it's better coaching at the NFL. That's garbage. The best coaching on a broad perspective is done in college football because that's where you actually teach and where you actually develop and where what you do actually matters. If you change a great coach for an average coach in college football, it's worth 5 to 6 victories either way.
Yeah.
Right? If you do that in the NFL, what's it worth? 1? I mean, coaching in college football is everything, whereas quarterbacks in the NFL are everything. I just bristle at this whole, coaching in college football is not that great. It's everything in college football, and this guy is doing it better than anybody else.
But I would argue this. The difference is everybody in the NFL is generally at least moderately competent. Jim Harbaugh to Brady Hoke, the gap is the Grand Canyon.
Okay, so you're going to have that gap because of the size of the...
the floor in college football gets low at some places.
It does. Now, when you've got the NFL that's just regurgitating the exact same guys in different locations with different brands on their hat, I think all you're doing is you're just changing around the deck, the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, because it's the same scheme everywhere you go. There's a lack of ingenuity. The game doesn't lend itself to coaching ingenuity and development and teaching players. That's why you see right now with the new CBA in the NFL, you have a trend of younger and younger players at the NFL level. Those coaches don't know how to develop them. They just don't. So what you have is a bunch of players that aren't very good in the National Football League, and that's why the product has suffered.
Dabo Swinney never gets mentioned with Harbaugh, Urban Meyer, and Saban, should he?
I think if he wins tonight, he absolutely should. Now, all those guys have done it for a number of years, and while he's been very good since about 2011, 2012, speaking of Dabo, it's really this one cycle of recruits. So he's gotten this one pocket of recruits, and he's had a lot of success. I think he's a great coach. Now, you can be one of several different types of coach at the college level and succeed. Saban is more of a schematic guy. He's going to be involved in the game plan. He's going to be involved in those things. Urban Meyer and Dabo Swinney are less so X's and O's guys and more so CEO motivator types. So what you have to give Dabo a lot of credit for is hiring the right assistants, getting a Brent Venables and letting him take control of the defense.
That's something, by the way.
I think it is, and delegating that type of responsibility. Dabo's a phenomenal coach. If he wins tonight, you'll start to see him pass the Stoops type of guys, and he'll start being in that conversation as in the David Shaw tier. I would call it the David Shaw tier.
Sure.
Even though Shaw hasn't won a national title, he's widely considered right at that next echelon to Harbaugh, Meyer, and Saban.
I'm going to make a guarantee.
Uh-oh.
Bama wins it by more than a touchdown.
More than a touchdown?
Yeah.
Okay.
8.
Interesting. I would not go 8. I'm going to go with 4. 24-20. I think Bama wins the game. They win the national title. And Nick Saban goes down as the greatest college football coach in the history of the sport.